What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your APM6 speakers. They come in 3 different colors of black, white, and classic wood like the ones I have right here, but the setup for each is going to be the exact same, so you're going to follow the exact same steps no matter which color you have from this video. So along with the speakers themselves, you also get this connector cable here, which connects from the main speaker to the left speaker, and you also get a power cable to power your speakers. Now these are available in 3 different colors of black, white, and classic wood like the ones I have here, but the inputs, outputs, and controls for each of these colors are the exact same. So the first thing I want to mention is the output to left speaker, and this is what you're going to use to connect the main speaker, which has all of the inputs, outputs, and controls, to the next speaker. So to connect the speakers together, you're going to take your connector cable here, take one end and plug that into the out to left output here. And while you're doing that, you want to make sure that this groove here lines up to the groove on the output. And then once you push this all the way in, you can use this cap here to screw the connector on to fully secure it to the output. And you'll know it's not going anywhere even if you try to budge it out, it's going to stay completely still. So then you're going to take the other end here and plug that into the input on the next speaker. And again, you want to make sure that the groove on the bottom of the connector matches to the groove on the input. And then again, once it's pushed in, you can use this cap to fully secure it to the speaker. Once that's all set, you can use the power switch here to turn the speaker on. Now on top we have the volume knob here to control the volume coming out of our speakers. We can even adjust the overall sound of the speakers using these bass and treble switches here. So for instance, we have the bass switch here that's going to affect the low end coming out of our speakers. So we can set this in the middle to 0 so that you have an even bass response. You can also switch it to the left so that you take away 4 dB or minus dB, and that's going to lower the bass coming out of the speakers. And then you can flip it all the way to the right to add 4 dB, which is going to give you more bass coming out of the speakers. And then we have the same type of control for the treble switch here, which is going to affect the high-end frequencies coming out of the speakers. So again, you can set this in the middle to 0 for an even treble. If you want to take away some treble, you can set it to minus 4 dB, which will lower it by 4 dB. And if you want to add more treble, you can flip it to the right to add 4 dB of treble through your speakers. So underneath that, we have a headphone jack, so we can plug in a pair of headphones to the speakers in case we wanted to listen to anything that's plugged into the speakers through the inputs more privately. So speaking of inputs, we actually have a whole section of inputs that we can use to connect anything to our speakers here. So we have the RCA input, so we can connect anything with an RCA output, like a record player, DVD or CD player, etc. We have the USB input, so we can connect a laptop or computer to the speakers. And then we have the left and right combo jack input, so we can connect a mixer, interface, and much more. So here I have my laptop that I'm going to be using to show you guys how to connect your speakers to your laptop or computer. So to do this, we're going to be using the USB-B input here on the back of our speakers, and we're also going to need a USB-B to USB-A cable. So we're going to take the USB-B end of our cable and plug that into the USB input on the back of our speaker here. Then we can take the other end and plug this into our computer. If you have a newer laptop like this one here that has USB-C ports, you can always get an adapter or dock to add the USB-A ports. You can also get a USB-B to USB-C cable. But for now, we're going to take the USB-A end and plug that into our dock here. Alright, so we've got the speakers connected to the computer now, but we want to make sure that everything we hear from our computer will come out of our speakers. So to do that, we're going to go into the sound settings of our computer. We're going to want to go into the output section, and then we're going to be looking for the device that reads USB audio device, and we're going to click on it. And now anything that we want to play out of our computer will come out of our speakers. Now if you're planning on using your DAW with these speakers like GarageBand, Logic, Pro Tools, etc., you're going to want to double check the output settings for your DAW as well. So you can go into the sound settings of your DAW, go to the output section, and make sure that you select the USB audio device as your output. So now to actually hear everything coming from our computer through the speakers, we're going to want to make sure to raise the volume knob here on the back of the speakers. Make sure that the volume on the computer itself is set to the appropriate volume. And then remember, you can use the bass and the treble controls if you want to fine tune the sound coming out of the speakers. So now let's hear how they sound. All right, sounds good. Ooh, very nice. Now, if you wanted to set up these speakers to your desktop computer, you're gonna follow the same exact steps. So another way we can use these speakers with our computer is by setting them up to our audio interface, so that this way, if you're a music producer or audio engineer, you can have your interface set up to these speakers for your mixes, for your recordings, etc. So to do this, we're going to be using the left and right combo jack inputs on the back of our main speaker here. And because the interface we're using today has 1/4 inch outputs, we're going to be using these 1/4 inch cables here to connect our interface to our speakers. But if you have XLR outputs on your interface, you're going to follow these same exact steps, except you're going to be using XLR cables. So we're going to take one end of our cables here and plug them into the left and right outputs of our interface. Then we're going to take the other ends and plug them into the left and right inputs on the back of our speaker. And you just want to keep track of which cable is coming from the left output and which cable is coming from the right output and match them to the speaker. So I'll take the cable coming from the right output of the interface and plug it into the right input of the speaker. Then I'll take the cable that's coming from the left output of the interface and go into the left input of the speaker. From here, we're going to go into the sound settings of our computer and switch the input and output to the interface. And you'll also want to check the sound settings of your DAW and switch the inputs and outputs to the interface. So for example, I'm using the Rockville Mini interface for today, so I'll want to be sure to set the inputs and outputs to the Rockville Mini for the sound settings of my computer and the sound settings for my DAW. So once that's all set, we're gonna raise the volume knob on the back of our speaker. We're gonna make sure that the volume on our laptop or computer is set to a good level as well. And don't forget, you can use the bass and treble controls to fine tune the sound coming out of the speakers. We'll also wanna make sure to raise the main mix knob here on our interface. So now that we're all set, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. Sounds awesome. Now, if you wanted some additional low end to accompany the sound of your speakers, you can always add a subwoofer to the mix. For that, I have my subwoofer underneath me off screen, but we're gonna show you all the inputs and outputs needed for this setup. And I'm gonna be using my laptop here as the music source, but you can follow these steps if you wanted to set this up with your smartphone, tablet, etc. So the first thing I'm gonna do for this setup is actually connect my laptop to my subwoofer. So to do that, I'm gonna take my RCA to aux cable. I'm gonna plug the aux end into the headphone jack of my laptop, then plug the RCA ends into the RCA input on the back of the sub. So now that my laptop is connected to the sub, I'm gonna wanna connect the sub to the speakers. So to do that for today, I'm gonna be using an RCA cable. I'm gonna plug one end into the RCA output on my sub. Then I'm gonna plug the other end into the RCA input on the back of the speaker. Now, if you were using a subwoofer that had XLR or 1/4 inch outputs, remember you can always use the left and right combo jack inputs to connect your sub to the speakers as well. From here, I'm gonna raise the volume on my speakers. And since we're using the subwoofer for our low end, I'm actually gonna go to the bass switch here on the back of my speakers and flip that to -4 dB so that we're not hearing as much low end coming out of our speakers, so that we have plenty of room for it coming out of the sub. You can also adjust the treble switch on the back of your speaker to add more high end if you feel like that's lacking with all the low end coming from your sub. Next, we'll want to be sure to raise the volume on our subwoofer. And if your sub has a low pass filter or a crossover, you can set this to however you see fit for your setup so that you have a nice balance between your speakers and your sub. So now that everything's all set up, let's hear how it sounds. Oh yeah, really feeling that low end now. Oh, that's awesome. So So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your APM6 speakers. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.